And now we can keep moving. So let's back up a little bit here. Three main functions of our integumentary system. That's what we're starting with. I'll do a super speedy recap since some of you weren't able to hear me, and then we'll check our knowledge. So the big three things our integumentary system is going to do for us is going to be protection, excretion, and then interacting with the environment. So first we've got protection here. It's a barrier keeping the yucky stuff out and the good stuff in. It waterproofs. Our melanocytes produce melanin. That's going to help protect us from the UV, and even our nails. Those are part of the integumentary system. It also excretes things that we don't want, so extra fluid, water, electrolytes like sodium, chloride, magnesium, and then harmful byproducts like urea, lactic acid, alcohol. Those are all things we don't need, and our sweat glands are going to help get them out. Our skin is going to help excrete them. So quick little check-in. Tell me which of the following are integumentary functions. Okay. A, B, D, A, B, C. Go ahead and just pop your answer down in the comments or whatnot. Once you guys give me your answers, we'll go ahead and go forward. I'll give you the correct answer. All right. Got A, B, C, A, B, D, C, B, A, B, and D. Okay. Correct answers are A, B, and C. So first, waterproofing. The skin, particularly the layer of the skin called the stratum corneum of the epidermis, contains keratin, and that's going to help prevent water loss and act as a barrier to external elements. So yes to waterproofing. That is a function of the integumentary system. Now B, thermoregulation, another correct answer. It's going to help the body temperature through one, sweat production. We can get rid of some heat in our sweat. That's called evaporative cooling. And two, by making our blood vessels in the dermis bigger and smaller, depending on how much heat we want to get rid of. If we vasodilate, our blood vessels get bigger, we can let off more heat. If we're cold and shivering, we'll vasoconstrict or get smaller blood vessels to help retain that heat. So yes to thermoregulation. Also, yes to waste excretion. We talked about how the sweat glands help get rid of things like urea, of lactic acid, of alcohol, all those waste things we don't want in the body. We can help excrete them with our sweat glands. Now, D was our incorrect answer. Synthesis of vitamin K when exposed to UV light. That is not true. But there is something that is synthesized when exposed to UV. It's just not vitamin K. It's vitamin D. Light activates vitamin D, and that is going to help with our bones. It's related to calcium, all of that good stuff. Vitamin K is something that's made in our gut, and it's going to help our blood clot. So we don't have any relationship with vitamin K and UV light. That's why D was incorrect. Okay. So we got a little bit of an overview of some of those functions. Now let's dive deeper into each part of the skin so you can really get to understanding it. We said a lot of words before when we were reviewing. Now it's time to break them down, okay? First of all, the skin is the largest organ of the human body. Like we said, it serves as that protective barrier between the internal organs and the external environment. And to do that, it has three primary layers. At the outside, we have the epidermis. That's going to be right here at the top. In the middle, the dermis. This is where we have a lot of our stuff, our hair follicles, our sweat glands, our blood vessels. And then at the bottom, we have our hypodermis, which is also known as the subcutaneous tissue. So we're going to zoom into each of these three layers, talk about them really quick, and then we'll do some practice together. First is the epidermis, outermost layer of the skin. It's that waterproof barrier. It's primarily composed of specialized cells called keratinocytes. So anytime you guys see cytes, that CYTES, you should be thinking, oh, that's a cell. That's a cell. A cyte is a cell. A keratinocyte produces keratin. So it's a cell, keratin. Keratin is a protein that provides strength and protection. So the keratinocytes are making the keratin. That's what really gives us the structure of this epidermis. Now, the epidermis is also home to another type of cell, the melanocytes. We talked about those briefly. They produce the melanin, which is the pigment that gives our skin its color and what protects us from UV radiation. Now, lots and lots of layers to the epidermis, okay? For it to be able to do all of these functions, protect us, keep those yucky microorganisms out, produce those, have those melanocytes producing melatonin, etc. We have several layers. So zooming in even further, we have the stratum corneum, lucidium, granulosum, spinosum, and basale. 5 layers to the epidermis. And you can kind of see them in this image over here. I think it's absolutely crazy how much detail there is in such a tiny layer of our skin. But starting from the outside, I think that's what makes the most sense. We're going to kind of go outside in. The stratum corneum, this is your outer layer where we've got keratinized cells, okay? They're like tightly packed together to make that waterproof covering, but they're continuously being flaked off as new cells come up from the deeper layer. Below the corneum is the lucidium. This is really only in our thick skin, like our palms and soles, and it's just another layer of dead cells, just giving us additional barrier against friction and abrasion. Below that, we have the granulosum. This layer is where cells start to flatten and the organelles disintegrate. So as you see, the bottom, bigger, plumper cells, and as they go up, up, up to the top, they're getting flatter and flatter. And really that granulosum is the point where their organelles start squishing out and they're dying off and getting flatter to move up to the top. They accumulate in granules, they aid in keratin production, and they start releasing lipids to help form that waterproof barrier. Below the granulosum, we have the spinosum. There are several layers here. They are thick and they provide strength and flexibility. Here is where we're making keratin. So those keratinocytes that were making all that keratin, they're in the stratum spinosum. And then the deepest layer, you can think like base, basale, it's the base of the epidermis. It has a single row of constantly dividing cells. It makes new cells, they go up. New cells go up. And that's what makes the layers above. So stratum basale at the base, making new cells, pushes those up all the way to the corneum, which is that outermost dead layer of cells that are flaking off. Now, a student here wants to know why the stratum corneum is called the horny layer. I really don't know. I don't know who came up with that name or why. I would think it has something to do with the appearance of those cells under a microscope and how they're kind of flaked up and maybe making the appearance of horns. But I'm not sure the origin story of exactly where all these names came from. You know, sometimes they're really easy to grab onto, like the stratum basale, that basal layer. Like, duh, it's at the base. That makes a lot of sense to us. Sometimes they are a little bit more strange. Yeah, no one asked me when they decided to name these. But those are your layers of the epidermis. Very top, waterproof barrier, boom. Let's go a little deeper now. Remember, we're working our way out to in and take a look at the dermis, okay? Now, we're going to spend a good amount of time here because this is really, in my opinion, the meat and potatoes of the integumentary system. It's where we have a lot of our extra stuff. The hair follicles are here, the sweat glands and the oil glands. Those are your sebaceous glands. All of the blood vessels that go into your skin, they're here in the dermis. We also have our nerves, so that's going to help us with sensation and interacting with the environment, and our lymphatic vessels so that we can respond to inflammation. So if we zoom in on this chunk here, this is just the dermis. Look how much more stuff it has than the epidermis. The epidermis was basically dead skin, making keratin, making melanin, creating that waterproof barrier. The dermis, we've got our hair. There's a hair follicle right there. We've got our blood vessels going in right here. So those are what's going to help with thermoregulation. Remember, they vasodilate to allow more blood if we need that evaporative cooling. They vasoconstrict if we need to retain heat. We've got our lymphatic vessels for inflammation and drainage, right? We've got muscles attached to that hair follicle. That's called the erector pillae. And that's going to help pull that hair muscle up. That's what gives us goosebumps if we're cold. So if we're shivering cold, we get goosebumps, our hair is standing up. It's because of that muscle right there, the erector pillae, pulling on the base of our hair follicle in that dermis. So it's kind of a lot going on, a lot of interaction with other systems, and it's all in that dermis. When we get below the dermis, in our most bottom layer here, that hypodermis, remember it's also called the subcutaneous tissue. This is pretty straightforward. It's that fatty subcutaneous tissue that does two big things. It absorbs shock and it helps with temperature regulation. You can think of it as like insulation. Those fat cells are going to help retain body heat, okay? So really, epidermis, outside, it's going to be your barrier. Hypodermis, inside, insulation, shock absorption, it's those fatty cells. Everything else is in the middle in that dermis, okay? So use that framework to help do a little knowledge check with me. Tell me which of the following are located in the dermis. Select all of the following that are located in the dermis: blood vessels, nerve endings, collagen, and melanocytes. Okay, A and C, A, B, and D. Let me know. Just pop in the comments quickly. Take your best guess, guys. I don't care if you get it wrong, but I do care that you try. I want you to participate, engage, give it your best quick little guess, and we'll move forward together from there. That's the only way we're all going to get better. We're going to pass these pre-nursing exams to get into nursing school. A and B, A and B. Okay, A and B looks pretty popular. Okay, I like it. You guys are correct, but also C. A, B, and C are all correct. So blood vessels, you guys know, dermis contains those blood vessels. They supply nutrient and oxygen to the skin. They help vasodilate and constrict to control heat. Then B, nerve endings are sensory nerve endings responsible for touch, pain, and temperature. We knew that. But a lot of us didn't think about C, collagen. That is correct. The dermis is rich with collagen. It provides structure and strength and elasticity to the skin. I'm betting a lot of you were thinking about the keratinocytes producing keratin, which were up in the epidermis. Keratin, collagen, although they have some similarities, are not the same. And we do have a lot of collagen in that dermis. Melanocytes, however, you guys were really smart not to pick that. Remember, those are the cells responsible for producing melanin, that pigment that protects us from UV radiation, and those are in the epidermis, specifically that stratum basale or basal layer. So A, B, and C All correct. You guys are awesome. Nice work. Now, to wrap up the integumentary system, I'm going to do a quick review of all the different accessory structures that plug in to the skin. We talked about the layers of the skin, epidermis, dermis, hypodermis. But remember, there are a lot of accessory structures that we found in that dermis specifically. So we'll do a quick little review of those guys because they're important too. The first one is the hair. That helps us with protection and sensation. We can see that hair shaft outside of the body. The follicle is that root embedded in the dermis down there. It has a small amount of connective tissue, and it's connected with that erector pili muscle. So you can see it right here. I think this is a nice little cross section that we can see in the dermis. And remember, that contracts when we're cold, causing goosebumps. That's why we get goosebumps. We're cold, the erector pili muscle contracts, and our hair stands up. Next thing we had our sweat and our oil glands, okay? We're going to start with the oil glands. These are known as sebaceous glands. Sebaceous glands. And they are right here around the hair follicle. You see those little pink, like plump flower looking things around the hair follicle. These are sebaceous glands. They are most numerous on the face and the scalp, but they are throughout the body as well. Anywhere where you think you get, a little bit oily, that oil is known as sebum. It comes from these sebaceous glands, and it helps lubricate the hair and the skin. Why do we need lubrication on the hair and the skin? Well, it prevents water loss. It gives us a barrier, helps maintain moisture. And then another really cool thing it does, it inhibits bacterial growth. It might even have some antifungal properties. So we need these sebaceous glands. Now, we can have too much of a good thing though, and if we're producing too much sebum, those glands can get blocked up, and that's when we have pimples, blackheads, acne. This often happens during puberty because hormonal changes cause us to make more sebum, and that's all in that dermis right there at the hair follicle. Pretty cool. Now let's look at the other type of gland, the sweat gland. That's right there. It's in the kind of the bluish color. It looks kind of snaky to me because these are coiled tubes. They actually open onto the skin surface, and they're what allows us to excrete that second big function that we have in the integumentary system. Extra water, sodium, chloride, all those waste products, urea, nitrogen, we can sweat those things out thanks to our sweat glands, okay? So these coiled tubes, they open on to the surface. They're concentrated in certain areas. We know we get sweaty in our armpits, for example, but they are still all throughout your body to help regulate those processes. And then our nails, back to protection, okay? That's going to sit on the tips of our fingers, tips of our toes. They actually develop from those epidermal cells in the top layer of the epidermis. The nail body is the visible part, but the bed actually lies underneath. So like down here at the base, it has lots of capillaries, which is what gives nails their pink color. Now, growth-wise, they grow from the stratum basale below at the nail base. Long nails regenerate if they are lost. If we lose a whole nail, we know that our nails grow constantly, but it does take some time if you lose a whole nail. Question here, are sweat glands present in the hypodermis also? If we go back here, we can see that sweat glands are only in the dermis. Down in the hypodermis is where we have those fatty tissues, that subcutaneous fat that insulates us. The sweat glands are up in the dermis. Thanks for asking that question. Appreciate it. Last structure I want to talk about. I want to talk a little more about melanin. We know our melanocytes are in that lower epidermal layer. They produce that melanin, and what it does for us is absorb UV rays. So they're sunscreen. They are protecting us from sun damage as those UV rays penetrate our skin. The melanin is going to absorb all the bad stuff and protect us from it. Okay. So those are your accessory structures. A lot of things. We're moving quick today. Knowledge check. Tell me which of the following is a primary function of the sebaceous glands. We have two types of glands. So remember what's sebaceous, what's sweat, and tell me what the sebaceous glands do. Good. All right, nice. Pop your answer down in the chat when you've got it. Comments, wherever you're at. Let me know what you're thinking. We'll see what you guys got. Give it your best guess. Okay. Most of you guys getting it. The correct answer is B. They secrete that oily substance to lubricate hair and skin. So think sebum is that oil. Sebaceous glands secrete sebum. The sweat glands, those are what produce sweat. They regulate the body temperature. Okay. Really good, really good. Now, I want to transition us into the immune system, which may seem kind of funny when we're thinking about skin. Now we're talking immune, but the skin is our first step in the immune system. We have to have that barrier of our skin, that physical barrier to prevent bad stuff from coming in order for our immune system to work. So I think it makes sense, as we've talked about that barrier for 20 minutes now, to go into our immune system. Our immune system is like our defense army, okay? We've got two main different ways that it protects us, but it is there to defeat any harmful invader, a bacteria, a fungi, a viral pathogen, any of that yucky grime that is out there in the world that we don't want to get in. So the two big ways it does this is either innate or adaptive. An innate defense is something that is immediate and non-specific. So this is what we've been talking about so far with the skin, that physical barrier that just immediately blocks anything. It's not specific to one bacteria or the other. It's just a line in the trenches stopping anything from coming across, okay? We also have some other innate responses from some cells. Our body can become inflamed and febrile to fight things off. It can send out phagocytes and natural killer cells that can go eat up bacteria. We'll talk about each of those. But the thing to remember is those are immediate and they're non-specific. So that's what makes them innate. Once we get a little more advanced and maybe that pathogen has evaded our innate responses, then we need adaptive defenses. These are specific responses to specific antigens, specific bacteria or fungi, and they're going to go and attack them. These are our B cells, our T cells, our antibodies, those sorts of things. So we'll go through each of these. That was kind of a broad overview, but we'll talk about each, really starting with that first line innate response, the skin, what we just talked about. Physical barrier, prevent pathogens from entering the body. We also have chemical barriers. These are secretions like your saliva, your tears, and even your stomach acid. Our stomach acid is that hydrochloric acid, really acidic. So that's going to kill yucky stuff that gets down in your system. And then we have biological barriers, the normal flora, the normal bacteria in your gut and other areas that outcompete the harmful guys. They don't leave any room for the bad guys to grow. So that's your first step. Just don't even get in here. Physical block, chemical block, I don't even have room for you. If they get past that first line, though, then we're going to send some overall responses. The second line of defense will kick in with white blood cells. The first type of cell we're going to have is a phagocyte. phagocytic cells like macrophages and neutrophils, these cells go and they eat up the bad guys. All right, so a phagocyte is an eater. They're going to engulf and digest any pathogen that they find. Remember, this is immediate and non-specific. That's what makes it an innate response. The other innate responses are our body gets inflamed and our body gets a fever. It's just going to try to raise that temperature to roast out those bad guys. Fevers are our friend. As someone who works with kids in clinic a lot, parents can be very, very afraid of their child having a fever, but it's actually a good thing. It's that second line of our innate response in our immune system that is trying to kill the bad guys. So we get inflamed, we get a fever, and if none of that works, our third line adaptive responses kick in. So these are the specific ones, all right? Remember, innate was like non-specific, whatever, we're just going to kill everybody. Adaptive are those specific targets: T cells, B cells, and antibodies. All right, we're going to break all of those down because I know there's going to be a lot of questions about them, but do a quick little knowledge check. Let me know you're still hanging in with me there. Which of the following is a function of the innate immune response? Good job. Let me know. Let me know what you're thinking. Give it your best guess. Seeing A, I'm seeing B, I'm seeing C. So that's good. You guys know it's not D. D, we have that specific response, so we know that's going to be adaptive. Innate immune responses are immediate and non-specific. It's not going to be A because antibodies are one of those specific things. We're getting ready to talk about them. And it's not going to be C, memory cells. Those are one of those specific things. So it is B, engulfing and digesting pathogens using phagocytic cells. So remember, the innate immune response, it's going to be our second line of defense. We're just immediately trying to knock out anything out there. It's not going to be adaptive or specific. So antibodies, B cells, T cells, memory cells, these are all specific things that our body adapts to. Phagocytes, those are our macrophages, our neutrophils. They just go eat everything up. They're like, oh, there's a bacteria, there's a bacteria. They eat it up, they get rid of all those pathogens. So that is an innate immune response. The antibodies, the B cells, the T cells, those are the adaptive. Let's talk about each of them because I know this is confusing. This is hard stuff. B cells. This is a type of lymphocyte. Remember, lymphocyte's a white blood cell, and the B cells make antibodies. B for antibody, B cell. So here's what happens. They find a specific pathogen. Let's say it's polio. All right. Hopefully no one has had polio. That's been eradicated. Let's say the cell, it finds polio. Now, polio has a little flag on the top that says, hi, I'm polio. That's called an antigen. It marks the cell. So this lymphocyte, or B cell, sees that antigen and it's like, oh, no, I do not want you in here. So it is going to produce antibodies. Remember, B cells make antibodies that recognize that antigen and they go bind and attack. They're like, absolutely not. You're not getting past my defense. I have found you. I've identified you. I'm going to destroy you. That's how that works. It's often described as like a lock and key. Like, okay, that flag on the top of the cell is, the lock. And then the antibody is the specific key that binds to it so it can destroy it. So the big takeaway I want you to have, antigen is like a flag on the outside of a pathogen, identifying what it is. And then the B cell makes an antibody to go attack it. Make sense? Clear as mud? Now, what about our T cells? we've got a bunch of different types, okay? Helper T cells, cytotoxic C cells, my favorite, the memory T cells, okay? Overall, T cells attack specific cells and they kill them, okay? The helper T cells activate other cells. So the B cells, the other T cells, they say, come on, let's get together. They're organizing. The cytotoxic C cells, they directly bind and kill infected cells. And then the memory T cells, they stay around for a long time and help us remember what we've seen. So after we've attacked that polio, the B cell made antibodies, the cytotoxic C cells went and killed them. The memory T cells, they stay around and say, I remember what that looked like. I flagged that antigen. If they ever come back around here, then I'm going to know it and I'm going to be ready to activate the immune system really, really quickly. Okay? So all of this, our T cells, our B cells, they are adaptive. They are adapting to what cells we find in the body, what pathogens we need to destroy. B cells make antibodies, T cells attack and kill. Okay, now the last point I want to talk about really quickly, what's the difference between passive and active immunity? We've talked about a bunch of different ways that the immune system can help our body out. You know, that first line with the skin, we talked about the skin first, and then we talked about the innate immune response where our phagocytes ate anything up, we had our inflammation, our fever, and then we just went through all that hubbub about adaptive immunity. Well, these responses, all these different lines of defense, they can either be passive or active. If we develop these passive immunity, it means it happened without our body really having a say so. We transferred antibodies from one person to another, and it immediately gave us some protection, but it wasn't our own body doing it. So this gives some short-term protection, but it's not going to change me long-term. Active immunity is when our own immune system is activated and produces its own antibodies, its own memory cells. All those T cells and B cells and antibody, they're coming from me, which means that I'm going to remember this long term. So go ahead and put in the chat for me. What are some examples of passive? In what ways could we transfer antibodies over to somebody else to give them some immediate benefits, but it's not really going to give them long-term protection? Does anybody have an example of passive immunity? I'm seeing the first answer I'm seeing is vaccine. Is a vaccine passive? Does that transfer antibodies but not activate the immune system? No. That is not how vaccines work. Vaccines activate our own immune system. We're going to give a little bit of that antigen so that the body's like, whoa, red flag, that's polio. I need to activate against it. And then our own body is going to start making antibodies, B cells, T cells, and we're going to remember what that polio looks like. So vaccines give us active immunity. Something that gives us passive immunity would be like breastfeeding. That's really good, Diane. Breastfeeding transfers some antibodies over from mom to baby, but they don't last long term. It gives them immediate short-term boost. It's not actually turning on their own immune system. So breastfeeding passive, vaccines active. With that being said, hopefully I've given away the answer here. Do this little knowledge check with me. Give me an example of passive immunity. I'm expecting everyone to get this right. You should have this. You should have it down. Passive, we transfer over. Good. Yes. Yes, Guchin, Zumu, Diane. Yes. Yesy. Yep. Good job. Jelaine, absolutely. It is B. Breastfeeding is passive immunity. Remember, this occurs when antibodies are transferred from one individual to another. They get an immediate short-term boost, but we're not activating their own immune system, okay? That's how I think about the difference. If I activate the immune system, it's active immunity. So that's going to be a vaccine. That's going to be, I naturally get infected. If I get the flu this year, I'm going to develop natural antibodies. It's activated. If I get exposed to a pathogen and my immune system is producing, I am actively involved. That is active immunity. Okay. Nice job. Nice job. How are we feeling? How are we feeling about the immune system? The immune system's a lot. We covered the skin, we moved into the immune system. It is definitely a hefty module. So I do want to pause, give you guys a brain break, and show you where to get these notes if you need them. Because I know some of you might want to review this later. Our webinars are always saved on our YouTube channel, and you can always get the notes at archerreview.com. Do you guys already have an Archer account? Do you guys know where to get them? Or do you guys need me to show you? Need me to show you. Okay. So when you come to archerreview.com, you come up here to nursing and then click on the TEAS 7. And then click buy now so that it pops you down to the bottom. We've got a ton of options for you, but you are going to want to do the Sure Pass. That's what's going to have the notes that I'm going to show you. You can see it starts out at just 30 bucks, so we keep it nice and easy for you there. And I will actually go ahead and pop that link over here in the chat so that you guys know right where I am if you do need to get these notes. So once you go there, just go ahead and pick what you want, go ahead and complete the purchase. And then when you log into your dashboard, this is what it will look like. You'll have your T7. It includes your question bank with over 2,000 practice questions, your on-demand videos, notes, cheat sheets, etc. So click on on-demand, and then I like to use this little search bar here. So we are going to look for the immune system. There we go. All of these videos are broken down into short little chunks so that you guys can see exactly what you need. And the notes are available right here when you click that paper clip, that green little paper clip. The video will get ready to start playing. I'm going to pause it so you don't have to listen to that. And then here is the handout. We'll go ahead and click download right here so you can see it. And then you also have a cheat sheet. These cheat sheets are so nice. They give you the bare bones, high yield info. If I was like getting ready to walk into my TEAS exam, this is what I would review. 3 lines of defense, innate versus adaptive, your B cells, your T cells, lots of images. We really just try to make it super, super simple and easy to understand. Here's the notes over here, all the things that we're going over right now that you just saw in these slides. So if you are looking for these handouts, that is where you go. We also have tutors and mentors. If you're like, Morgan, you have gone through a lot. This is too much. Please stop. Go ahead and scan one of those QR codes, head over to our tutoring page, and we'll get you set up. Any questions at all about those resources so I can make sure you guys feel set up for success? I don't want you to leave feeling overwhelmed. I want you to make sure you know where to go. Questions? Okay. You guys are ready to cover our last system of our lecture today? You're ready to jump into the urinary system? Question here from Perla, do you have to pay for tutoring? Yeah, you do. Unfortunately, we can't offer tutoring for free because we do need to pay our excellent instructors. We keep it as affordable as possible. And if you have any concerns about paying, do feel free to email us so that we can see what we can do for you. Let me get our email up there in the chat if this will open for me. It is just going to be pre-nursing archerreview.com. And you guys are welcome to email us any questions anytime if you are trying to figure out what the right package is, if you need assistance, if you're trying to book tutoring, any of that stuff. I will say you get a lot better deal booking tutoring if you book multiple sessions at a time. I want to say starting at 3 sessions, you get a certain percentage off, 5, 10, etc., etc. So if you do know that you need support, like for example, in math, you're going to want to talk to Brandon. If it's science, A and P, you're going to want to talk to Shelly. And if you know you need some additional support, booking those in a group will definitely end up saving you some cash. So that's pretty nice. All right. Any other questions before we move on? We only have a little bit left. Hopefully you guys are still hanging in there with me. We're good? Thumbs up. We're ready to move on. Okay. Beautiful. Well, the last system we're talking about today is the urinary system. So we're going to start with an overview of its structure. Really, again, from top to bottom is how I like to function. So at the top, we have our kidneys. These are going to be in the retroperitoneal space, so kind of like our flank back here in our back. These help us maintain fluid homeostasis. They filter out the waste in our blood. They make active vitamin D. So lots and lots of functions here. For our purposes, we are really going to think of the kidneys as a filter for our blood. Our blood's going to get dumped into the kidneys. They are going to help put the good stuff back into our body. And the bad stuff, they're going to filter out into the urine. The kidneys are broken down into their outside and their inside. The outside is the renal cortex. That's where we have blood vessels. They make hormones. They activate that vitamin D. And then the inner layer, the medulla, we're going to really talk about the units in the medulla. That is where the filtration happens. We filter all that bad stuff out of our blood and put it into urine and concentrate it down. Now, once that happens, the urine is going to pass from that renal medulla down the ureter. So these yellow tubes over here on the side, those are ureters. They are really simple tubes that just connect kidney to bladder. We all know our bladder, right? Stretchy muscular tissue that's going to hold that waste. And then when it's time to get rid of that waste, get rid of that urine, it goes through the urethra, tube that connects bladder to the outside of the body. So that's kind of the typical pathway. Check in with me here. Which of the following describes what that renal medulla does? Inner part of the kidney up there. What does the renal medulla do before we go down the rest of that pathway? Okay, nice job. Good. Nice. All right, I'm seeing some B, some C, some D, some more C, and excellent, excellent. I love it. C is the right answer. That medulla is what is concentrating our urine. Good stuff back in the body, bad stuff into the urine, concentrating it. Now, A, producing hormones that stimulate red blood cell, and D, containing blood vessels that supply nutrients, and B, filtering waste. These things all still happen in the kidney, okay? But they happen in the renal cortex. So the kidney has 2 layers to it. Remember, cortex is outside here, and then inside is the medulla. And that's where we are concentrating the urine. We do this in a connection of tubules. Inside that renal medulla, it's Really crazy how much is going on. We can break it down into the functional unit of the kidney, which is called the nephron. So here, if we zoom in, this is one nephron. We see that the blood is being supplied to that nephron, and then we're going to remove our waste and concentrate our urine. So we remove salts, ammonia, urea, glucose, oxalate, bad stuff, stuff that we don't want to deal with. That nephron is going to filter it out and pop it into the urine. But remember, renal medulla is concentrating the urine. We have to resorb the good stuff, that stuff that we want, the water and the nutrients. So that's what's happening at a high level in our nephron. Let's kind of trace the pathway, see if it makes a little more sense to us. So first, blood full of waste is going to go through the renal artery. It's actually about 30% of our cardiac output. Boom, it goes right to the kidneys. Okay. First thing it enters in that nephron is the glomerulus. This creates filtrate, solutes such as salts, ammonia, urea, glucose, like we just talked about. It is filtering those into the urine. That filtrate, it's going to move into our next step right here, which is called the proximal tubule. Some of that filtrate is reabsorbed into the body. We're going to keep any good stuff, right? And the rest of it moves down the loop of Henle and up into the distal convoluted tubule. Here, we're resorbing water. We're resorbing nutrients. Anything that we're like, no, I actually want to hang on to that. We're going to put it back in the blood. Newly filtered blood, well, now it's going to go back to the heart through that renal vein here. All right, we got the good stuff. We got the water, the nutrients. Send it back to the body. But whatever's left, it's draining out that distal convoluted tubule to the collecting duct. And where is it going? The ureter, right here. It is going to go into the ureter. That's where urine then collects, drains into the bladder, and it stays there until we're ready to excrete it out the urethra. That bladder is just that temporary place to store it. Okay, so which structure in the nephron is responsible for transporting urine to the ureter and plays a role in the final water and solute balance? What do we think? Structure in the nephron that transports urine to the ureter. Is it the glomerulus, the proximal tubule, the loop of Henle, the collecting duct? Good. All right, I'm seeing a lot of D. Some B. Okay. Some B, Lourdes, Jacqueline. Okay. Good. All right, most of you got it. It is, in fact, D. That collecting duct is the final part of the nephron where urine undergoes that final water and solute concentration. Remember, concentrating urine happens in that renal medulla, that last part of the nephron, that collecting duct. The proximal tubule, that's that first part of the nephron. It's primarily where we're reabsorbing good stuff, nutrients and water after we have that initial filtration. Glomerulus, that's actually even before the proximal convoluted tubule. That's where we get that initial filtrate. The loop of Henle, that happens right after the proximal tubule, and that helps concentrating urine, reabsorbing water and sodium, and then it passes it to that distal tubule and collecting duct. So it's concentrating it, yes, but it's not transporting it to the ureter, that last part. So let's actually go back to the image because this is a lot of stuff. This is a lot of words. And I had a couple of questions in the chat that were really, really good. So we're going to kind of trace this. The first question I had was, what's the difference between our glomerulus and our Bowman's capsule? Because they're both kind of right here, right? And we know that's the initial step. We see here is the renal artery in red, and all that blood is going over to the glomerulus. The glomerulus, what is it? A tiny network of capillaries, really small blood vessels, and it's inside of that Bowman's capsule. The glomerulus filters that blood, it gets out the bad stuff, and it makes the filtrate. So blood goes into the glomerulus from that afferent arteriole, that renal artery, bringing blood to the glomerulus. So the Bowman's capsule, what is that? A cup-shaped, double-walled structure that surrounds the glomerulus. It collects the filtrate produced by the glomerulus and channels it over to the next part of the nephron, which is that proximal convoluted tubule. Here we get more resorption. Loop of Henle, more resorption. Distal convoluted tubule, more resorption. And then lastly, the collecting duct, where we have that final concentration and we transport that urine out to the ureter, bladder, and then out of the body through the urethra. All right, you guys, you did it. You made it through 3 systems today. That was a fast and furious review. Please let me know, what questions do you have before we end our time together here today? I'm yours for another few minutes. I would love to know what you want to know more about, if this was helpful, or whatever you might need from me. I promise you that I care very passionately about making sure all of you have what you need to get into nursing school. I know these exams, the TEAS, the HESI, whatever exam your school's requiring you to take, they are not easy. They cover a lot of information, and this is just part of it. So please make sure to check out our resources and let us know how we can be there for you. I'm going to put our email in the chat another time in case you think of a question later. You're like, oh my gosh, I should have asked Morgan that. Whatever it might be, please feel free to email us and know that we have resources for you, not just getting you into nursing school, but all throughout your program. Every class that you're going to take in nursing school, we have a companion to go with you and help make it easier. So I've got the TEAS stuff up here, all the pre-nursing info. Please let me know any questions at all that you have, and I will see you guys back here next time. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for listening. I hope it was helpful. Bye, guys.